Hello, dear friends. Today we continue to get acquainted with the diary of a German soldier. Remember to rate this video, and also leave your opinion in the comments. And here we go. June 6th. We ride on horseback to Demyansk in the morning. The 2-hour training will be conducted in Demyansk for 1 day only. In the evening, under heavy rain, I go out on foot to Luki, to the baggage wagon to stay overnight. June 7th. In the morning, I go by truck to the convoy. The weather is great. At 1100, I arrive in Ilyina Gorka. From there, we go on horseback to the convoy. In the meantime, our commander returned. Petty officer and I visited him in the regiment on June 3rd. June 11th. I was assigned to a field training company. We live a splendid life there. It is a wonderful harbor and nothing like war. Only from time to time we are bothered by lame ducks throwing bombs. As for the rest, our days here are the best of all. I took over the 1st platoon. Oberlieutenant Bao is in charge of the company. We are engaged in combat training, so that the new recruits will be able to move easily along the front line. I guess our days in the field training company are drawing to a close. July 19th. We marched to Tarasovo with a bivouac. Here in Tarasovo, I receive my salary and say adieu to my training company. I report to the commander about my arrival. At once, the briefing on the company's taking a new position begins. I am accommodated in the dugout number 9. July 24th. I move out to dugout number 11B, and after several more days, I move to dugout number 13. August 17th. I'm on my way to leave on vacation. August 18th. I fly home on a transport plane. August 21st. At 1700, we cross the border towards the homeland. I am met in Westhofen on August 22nd. We have 21 days of leave. All has been wonderful. About what else to dream of for us soldiers? September 11th. The leave is over. At 2100, I go from Dortmund to Russia. September 12th. In the evening, at about 1800, I arrived in Verballen. September 13th. At 0:30, I started to leave Verballen to join the army by the old way. The road was quite good. I made it safely to our army. September 16th. I am again in position. Feldwebel goes on leave. I must replace him. September 28th. We take a new position. The office and the convoy remain in Ikondovo. It is an old office scrap. I have barely any of it left. Still, you get to learn something new, and October will be over soon. I gradually settle in. It all becomes commonplace. With time, I get used to everything. Since October 20th, this is my attitude in life. October 28th. The commander, Oberlieutenant Stelle, leaves us. I go immediately to the company and stay the night there. In the morning, the neighbor to the left, 3rd Company, attempts a sortie. It goes very well. I observe them from a high observation post. That's true, the commander is leaving. At 1100, he says goodbye to us. For 2 years we have been together. We veterans, and there are not many of us left, are not glad to see him leave at all. But this is the war. October 29th. The commander went away. 3 hours later, I was sent to the 3rd Company. The platoon commanders had all been disabled over there, so from now on, I was out of my company too. People adapt to everything. Now, I feel quite comfortable in the 3rd Company. November 12th. There is an order on the regiment, an order of my reassignment to the 3rd Company. Now I won't be back in my former 1st Company anymore, and I like it. I have some old good comrades there in the 3rd Company. Lieutenant Mueller and non-commissioned officer Mella. We used to be together in the 7th Company. The weather is nice at the end of the month. There are snowstorms, and I am with my men on 3 heights, and it's good for the wind to blanket our positions with snow. The entrenchment system is covered with snow 3 times a day. It is a never-ending process to remove the snow, but you can't escape, or else we end up dead. For example, on November 27th, a messenger was seriously wounded because the trenches were covered with snow, then he died. And yesterday there was another one. On December 2nd, there was another one. We have made it to the last month of the year. It's Christmas on the doorstep. There is a Christmas wreath in each of the dugouts. That looks pretty holiday-like. I do hope we will have a nice Christmas. A couple of days ago, my dugout was on fire. It is very small, with nothing but a signaling equipment and a radio. I am very accustomed to it. It is perfectly constructed and well equipped. December 17th. It's the birthday of our commander, Oberlieutenant Fischer. We had a nice celebration from 6 o'clock to 1500. Well, it was almost like our old company. We have a lot of work to do in the next few days. For celebrations, we always gather in a large dugout of 40 men. We had a good Christmas. There were a lot of gifts. The regimental commander visited us, presented us with a radio and a lot of packages. The battalion commander did the same. Overall, the year slowly draws to a close. 1943, January 1st. New Year's Eve, I get a telephonogram. The colonel wishes to talk to me. He informs me that I have been promoted to the rank of lieutenant. I'm delighted. The battalion commander and the company commander immediately greet me. The company commander brings the shoulder straps, and then we go to celebrate. All the next few days we do is celebrate, even with my old company. January 9th. Captain Stelly returned from the neck hole. He was in the 12th Field Infirmary with a concussion. He saluted his old platoon officers. In the next few days he goes on leave, wants to get married. On January 15th, he was awarded the Knight's Cross. We are very glad. Captain Lem greeted all his old comrades. All quiet at the position. People say that we will be replaced soon. January came to an end. It's the beginning of February. The rumors of a replacement are true. Nobody knows what it will be like. We begin putting together whatever we got. It is a very time-consuming task. February 15th. Everything is put together. What is unnecessary we throw away. The Demyansk fortress will be abandoned. We will withdraw to the rear behind the river Lavat. Since February 18th, I am in charge of the battalion's near-cover unit. I withdraw the convoys from Demyansk through the neck hole. It goes on until February 21st. In the morning, between 6 and 8 o'clock, I arrive to the battalion, located in a village about 8 kilometers south of the river Tuliblia. The order is to the rear, march! The Russians broke through near Peno, on the Demyansk-Staraya Russa highway. Our battalion will be used to counter them. The companies are loaded on vehicles. We need to return a bit by the same road we went here. I'm leaving with the company at about 1400. February 21st. At about 1700, I report my arrival to the company. I take over my platoon, and we head for our assigned position to the right of Peno on the edge of the woods. It is long after dark by the time we reach our destination. We have a communication with our neighbor on the left, but on the right there is a big hole. Until dawn on February 22nd, all is quiet. Still, at night, Ivan approached us, but we frightened them away. As soon as it dawned, the performance began. Stalin's organs, mortars, tanks, and so on. We were bombarded with everything that can be imagined. Initially, there were not enough infantry at all, and when it came, we kicked it hard. The tanks, however, were in great quantity. By evening, there were 20 destroyed Russian tanks in front of our positions. So the days passed by. Over and over again, we pushed back the enemy who had broken through. The weather was cold. We had no good positions, and therefore no proper places to shelter. February 24th. I was easily wounded in the neck, and 2 hours later I was also wounded in the right shin. A bit later I was shot in the left thigh. Well, enough of that now. They take me away. The combat medic made me a bandage. I said goodbye to the commander, and I am driven further to the rear in a sanitary vehicle to their location. There I was treated with injections, and the endlessly long ride to the field hospital of the 18th Motorized Division began. By the time we reached the place, it was almost evening. We were welcomed very warmly. On February 28th, I was operated on. I remained in bed until March 1st, when in the evening I was taken to a collection point for the wounded. I was loaded at once into a temporary hospital train. We set off at night. This train is headed towards the homeland. 2 days later, we arrive in Plascow. They unload us, accommodate us, bandage us, and give us food. There we stayed for a few days. Things were very good, but then we get loaded and are driven back to our homeland. On March 9th, we have landed in eastern Prussia. We are given a lot of presents and then taken to the evacuation hospital in Allenstein. They leave us alone until the next morning. Then they get us on a hospital train, and then we go on to Silesia. It was a pretty good ride. Constantly we stopped to let the wounded off. Here's our turn with Lieutenant Hintze. The hospital in Löwenberg, Silesia, awaits us. We arrive on Sunday. We are very well treated. The food is very nice. The nurses take care of us very well. The doctor is the only one who is not good. I stayed there for 8 days, and then I was taken to Krummhubel in the Giant Mountains. And that was the final stage of my war on the Eastern Front. That is all for today. The author of this diary has survived the war. These wounds on the Eastern Front gave him a chance to save his life, because in 1943, the German army on the Eastern Front began to collapse. These notes were interesting as they described the situation in the Demyansk cauldron from the point of view of a Wehrmacht soldier. The core of the defense there were the Waffen-SS units, but the Wehrmacht soldiers also had a significant impact on this defensive operation. If you enjoyed it, remember to give this video a like and support the channel with a subscription.